What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. We're often told by society that forgiveness is something that we should strive for, how it's an act of self-service, how if you don't forgive, you do more harm to yourself than good, how forgiving someone is a way to free yourself from what happened. And while I might agree with that in some senses, I don't like the imposition that I must forgive, that I have to buy into the idea that I have to forgive or else it will eat away at me, that I will never be free from it. What if something someone caused was so atrocious that actually allowing myself to accept that I won't forgive them is the freeing feeling? Maybe rejecting the entire notion pushed by society that I have to forgive is the source of my pain. Maybe forgiving that undue stress that I'm putting on myself, this undue expectation. Maybe forgiving in spite of myself isn't the way of being free from it. Maybe it's allowing myself to feel however it is that I feel, regardless of any externally promoted ideas of how I should feel. The problem becomes that I don't really know how to tell when it is better to forgive and when it is better to feel how I feel. What's the threshold of atrocious? And it's not about holding a grudge. Both should lead, whatever you do, should lead towards feeling freer and less emotionally burdened by the situation or person. It's about letting yourself feel how it is that you feel, without guilt, without having to buy into ill-timed wisdom that does not match the speed of your processing of grief or hurt or betrayal. How you feel right now is always okay and always rightly timed. So as long as it leans towards freeing yourself and feeling lighter, follow that feeling. I'm talking about this as someone who has tried very hard to forgive, can't figure out how to forgive. We tend to vividly hold on to all the wrongs someone does to us. I could tell you in detail the way someone might have hurt me or continues to hurt me, and I can feel the depth of that emotion as if it's happening right now, even in the ways that I hurt myself and need to forgive myself. And if you do that enough, you will have a collection of stories of how someone has hurt you. It never ends. It just piles on. And not only do I consider forgiveness as an option to free myself, but I also think about the challenge it is sometimes. There are certain things I just haven't figured out how to forgive. I heard Colin Campbell put this in a beautiful way, saying, sometimes you are not ready to forgive. You can't even imagine forgiving, but you can imagine the possibility of maybe being in a place where you might forgive. You can imagine that you might imagine someday forgiving. Whatever place you are with it is fine as long as you are not using it to add more misery to your life by brooding over it. So while I can't exactly figure out how to forgive some things, the reason I decided to make this episode is because I came to a realization that was undeniable through logic, but it also pierced right through my heart. And that's the idea that no matter what you do, you forgive or don't forgive for now, true north is still forgiveness. Because in many ways, forgiveness is the only option. Forgiveness is the only choice. What do I mean by that? I thought about forgiveness as a way that your psyche holds someone accountable for their actions. Why else would you hold on to something and not forgive? If there was nobody to forgive, you would have just let it go. In a way, it's protection for you to prevent it from happening again, a form of maybe a healthy fear. But at the same time, there has to actually be someone to hold accountable. I thought about all the wrongs I have done in my life, things I've had to apologize to people for, things I did when I was younger. And in some weird way, we expect to be forgiven or asked to be excused for our youth, the mistakes we made when we were kids and didn't know any better. And I realized that the person you are asking this forgiveness from also has no choice but to forgive you. Forgiveness is the only option, because the part of them that would hold on to an issue or a grudge and not forgive you for your childlike ways or whatever have you, the part of them that would hold it against you is holding it against a part of you that didn't know any better, against a part of you that didn't exist, doesn't exist, never existed even in that moment. It was the void of you that they wished knew better. They can only hold it against you if you knew better and you hurt them anyway. To hold it against you when you didn't know any better is like holding it against a ghost, against an imaginary version of you, against an expectation of their own that wasn't met, against almost this empty space where you don't actually exist, didn't occupy with that knowledge. So how do you hold somebody accountable? How do you not forgive or overlook something when a person didn't know any better? And in some ways, we are all unconscious. And the things that offend us about other people are their unconscious. Because you have had no choice, and they had no choice to know any better, to then make a different decision. It just becomes an unfortunate circumstance more than having someone to neatly blame. They didn't know they were violating something. Your only option then becomes to forgive them. Now, again, if someone does know something and then does the opposite of that anyway, despite you or in spite of themselves out of malice, then they know they are in the wrong. That's where you're holding it against someone is more understandable and acceptable. Because when you're a kid, it is expected that you are ignorant and don't know the ways in which you hurt someone. That telling your mom you hate her might actually hurt her. That being rude to someone or bullying them can cause lifelong damage. But I think it becomes harder to forgive adults because you think they should know better than you expect your 15-year-old self to. And it's harder to attribute ignorance to an adult because you think that their life experiences should have shown them better, should have shown them what is acceptable and not acceptable, and at the least see things in the way that you see them. But even that becomes unrealistic with adults, doesn't it? Because in that is the implicit imposition that they have had the same experience that you have. And even if it is adults, it is not necessary that they live up to your expectations or have the same life experience that gets them to see what is hurtful in the same ways that you consider things hurtful. That's not fair to anybody to expect. And so that guarantees that you will encounter even adults that, because of their own unique life experience, will naturally do things to test your boundaries, that transgress, that are unconscious of what you are conscious of. And you can call that they're unconscious if you would like, but what is conscious to you is not always the same ways other people are conscious. And that doesn't mean that they're unconscious beings. They're just unconscious to the things that you are conscious to. And I'm sure that works both ways. Things that they are conscious about, you are unconscious about. So again, forgiveness becomes the only option. Because who are you holding it against? Their unconscious self? The unoccupied space that they didn't exist in? Unless, of course, they are maliciously doing something. But most of the times, how do you gauge if it's deliberate and malicious and fully conscious? That's a whole another question. How do you know if somebody is purposely and maliciously trying to violate you? Would they do it again if they actually knew explicitly the places that they trespass? I doubt it, especially in their right mind. I guess only you could know if that overall tone of a relationship is heading in that direction, and then maybe you can attribute some things. But most of the times, it's just humans being humans. People not knowing any better. So that leaves us with forgiveness as the only option. And I don't know what I mean by forgiveness, I guess, other than the fact that you just overlook the thing that they did, the thing you did to yourself. Because if you don't, and you hold on to it, ask yourself, who can you really hold accountable? And maybe the person you're holding it against doesn't exist. And what good does that do you? To hold grudges against a ghost. I love you, family. Stay true always. I see you on the next show.